All right, what is going on, everyone, and welcome back to Mets Weekly. We are live at this very moment on YouTube and on X to discuss the latest news, rumors, reports regarding, we all know what it's regarding, the top guy that is on the market, who the Mets are in the mix for. We talked about this yesterday. I was here solo. We will get into all of it. I'm joined here by Frank, but we'll get to that guy in a second. Before we do that, I just want to remind everyone to subscribe to the Mets Weekly YouTube channel for weekly episodes of our show that is recorded live every Monday night, typically at 7 p.m. It's been a little bit crazy this past week where we've kind of jumped off the schedule, but we all know that Juan Soto is pretty much keeping things up, such as that. For those of you watching or listening on playback, you want to join the conversation in the future, make sure to turn on those post notifications to know when we go live, as well as multiple videos that we usually put out all off-season long, which we have some in the works. For those of you in the live chat as of right now, we love reading your comments, your questions, your concerns. We're going to do this in kind of a mailbag type of style for this stream. So we're not going to be starring many. We'll just pull things up when we can pull things up because we don't have much of a formulated show for today. And of course, make sure to follow Mets Weekly on X and on TikTok for future content over there. And for our audio listeners, make sure to follow us on all your favorite listening platforms for the audio version of podcast episodes that go up at 9 a.m. the following day. So, without further ado, let's get into all of the craziness. Now, there are comments flying in and out, reports, rumors, things going back and forth of what has been going on with the Juan Soto saga. It is pretty much a 24/7 attraction, as it should be, with him being as good as he is. But we did have some other news that did come through, and we will get into that in a second. But this is definitely escalated to the point where, again, like I have at the bottom here, and I'll go to you, Frank. I mean, 72 hours, we're going to know where Juan Soto is going to end up. Will it be the Mets? Will it be the Yankees? Will it be Boston, Toronto, Los Angeles? Will he just take the qualifying offer from the Yankees, because he just wants to prove himself even more?
Yeah, so he already declined the qualifying offer. That deadline happened, so that we would know that won't happen. But overall, it's exciting. I mean, we're getting really, really close down to that final decision that we've all been waiting for since the offseason started. I mean, that's really what we've been talking about. That's been the talk of everybody all over the place. And not only is it important for the Mets, but I keep saying this, it's important for all of baseball. I feel like, as we know, there are 5 teams that are very involved. And it just feels like a lot of the other free agents are just waiting to see, particularly with the hitters, are waiting to see what happens with Juan Soto before everyone else can get moved. Because it's like we said, if Soto doesn't go to the Mets, that increased the odds of Pete Alonso maybe coming back. So it's like Alonso's market is affected. How many suitors are for Santander right now, depending on who gets Soto? So not only is this holding up the Mets, but you feel like it's holding up all of Major League Baseball. So you feel like once this gets out of the way, now this stove should heat up a little bit. We should see some more things happening all across the sport of baseball.
I mean, when you look at what has been going on, you've had a flurry of few moves that have come through, and I think that you're definitely like you're waiting for something big to happen, even though you know that the winter meetings are the big thing here that we're all waiting for, which is going to start on December 8th, 9th. It's going to be about 4 days in regards to that. And I think that when we all kind of anticipate this one date, we know that there is still going to have to be someone who sets the market as the top guy. And we know that the top guy is going to be Juan Soto, even though we have quite a bit of stars that are on the market, especially for this offseason, which was definitely anticipated as much as it was. I'm pretty sure we had a report from, I don't know who it was. Maybe it was Rosenthal. Maybe it was Feinstein. I'm not sure who it was. But they said once Soto signs, the floodgates are going to open and it's going to be mayhem. Because I feel like when the market is pretty much set for Juan Soto, the other teams, let's say Soto goes back to the Yankees, that opens up, well, Boston for Santander or Toronto for Santander. I mean, we have quite a pivot shift after Juan Soto as well, because it's going to get even crazier. To be honest, there might be a time where, let's say the Mets, let's say they sign Juan Soto. Let's say they sign Juan Soto. Could it be possible that they just sign somebody else as well, just like right afterwards? Like it's possible that it can go that quick, because this is such a this is a star that is, at the top of the chart right now, and compared to everybody else, he's in a different stratosphere, and that's kind of how you feel. Where there's some teams bringing in these backup plans. Maybe it's possible that happens, but I mean, it's really exciting to think that, maybe there is a win for everybody, but we know who the top prize is, and that being Juan Soto, who can definitely set up your franchise for, years and years and years to come.
Yeah, I think maybe not so much a free agency signing, but I could see the possibility of a trade being a lot more likely. Once you know that I have Juan Soto, okay, now I can move to some other things. It's like if I were to trade Starling Marte, there's people that talk about you trade for Arizona for Jordan Montgomery. It's a lot easier to do that trade knowing that I already have an outfielder to replace Marte signed, then now I can just trade him away and get something else back that can help me out. Or it's like, okay, now that I got Soto, I don't need to spend big in starting pitching, so I can make a trade for a starting pitcher. I just feel like that's maybe where you have an agreement in place with two teams, and they're just waiting for the Mets to be like, to give them the green light to say, okay, go. I can see that being a little more likely, where a trade could already be in the works, but we just don't know it yet. But overall, like we said, a lot of teams, they're just kind of waiting to see what happens here.
I do have a feeling of if the Mets were to miss out on Juan Soto, because I feel like with Mets fans, we do expect the worst sometimes. It happens. I see some people typing in the chat right now of the worst case scenarios, but I do have an idea of who the pivot is going to be, and I will save it if it happens, and if we end up missing out on somebody like Juan Soto, because right now it looks like all these teams have an equal chance, maybe aside from the Dodgers, but the Dodgers can be the Dodgers and just do something stupid or ridiculous because they're the Dodgers. Because right now what we heard from Rosenthal saying that the Dodgers are not over $600 million. It probably is just $600 million from the Dodgers right now, but over $600 million is with the Mets, the Red Sox, the Yankees, and the Blue Jays. We even had reports about that. We were actually talking about this before the stream started about is it possible, is it possible that the Blue Jays maybe are the richest deal? We saw Buster Olney say something on Foul Territory, saying that the Jays are really aggressive in free agency right now. They're even connected to Corbin Burns as well. He also said that they reek of desperation. So it's possible that maybe he's not the destination for Soto, but they're going to make it they might make it a little bit challenging for him to turn that down. But when it comes to the overall bidding on Juan Soto, Jeff Passan kind of settled everything down last night on ESPN, kind of talking about how, he is going to be meeting with those teams this weekend, and he will decide, as no later than the start of the winter meetings on Monday, which is basically, 72 hour range, maybe give or take a few. And, we also had, Olney also confirmed this, that it's possible that you have 15 years, $750 million being the, richest contract in the history of the game being dealt out to somebody like Juan Soto. And when you hear 15 years, 750, that was the deal that I would have been willing to just slap on the table, because you're in too deep as of right now. But hearing something like that, and you don't know if it is actually true, but again, these are guys, both from ESPN, both confirming the same thing. Jeff Passan, we know, who is, probably the most trustworthy of them all. From what I'm hearing here, it's like, offer that. Go ahead. Just offer that. Just give him 15. $750 million, which is what I would just slap on the table pretty much. And this is the type of feeling that I kind of get here. And I've always been someone who has been very patient with the process of this organization being a sustainable winner. And always seeing the logic of a lot of things and kind of talking about it as for, being very objective in the sense of, okay, I understand why they're not doing this, or I understand why they're doing this. I'm telling you right now, the legacy of Steve Cohen's on the line here. And I feel like that's somehow how some Mets fans feel. Can be a little bit more brash in that situation. But at this point, if you're not going to spend the fuck you money on Soto, who are you going to spend it on? This is it. This is it. And I'll tell you right now, and if it is shown that we don't have a decent amount of the highest offer that was considered, I don't know, maybe the Jays have a different type of currency because they're in Canada. Canada is a very weird country. There goes our Canadian viewers. But when it comes to the whole situation with the Mets, I'm cutting the cord when it comes to Cohen if this doesn't happen where they offer the most money, which I do think that he's going to go to the highest bidder because this is what you hire Scott Boras for. If they're not the highest bidder by a decent margin, by maybe, I don't know, 15 million, 20 million, that's when I'm going to start to turn a little sour on Steve Cohen. Because I really, there isn't a player that's going to come along that's going to be this young and this in their prime and this generational as Juan Soto. I understand you can give the difference to, somebody like Shohei Ohtani, who, in that market, it just didn't line up. It didn't line up with Stearns coming in here, evaluating the franchise of what they can do, of who's in the future. They had the whole timeline with Pete Alonso, all that stuff. It was all complicated at that current moment. And Stearns definitely had to come in here and, sprinkle some dust in some areas and other areas to make, a deep team and make his impression. Now this just lines up perfectly. It lines up way too perfectly. Money came off the books in the offseason. Tons of money came off the books in the offseason. The outfield, we know that there is one guy that we prefer to replace and not play right field. And right now, and you also have the flexibility of Steve Cohen. And I'm not going to put Stearns under the bus if this ends up being a different thing, because this all has to do with it being a Boras client, with it being Juan Soto, with how generational of a player he is. This is up to Steve Cohen. How far is he willing to go? And how far he is willing to go, to be honest, I don't think any price is too big now. You're in deep way too much. I don't know if that's how you feel, but I'm done. I'm not. This is it. This is it. And because to be honest, if they don't end up being the top offer, end up being top offer, Steve Cohen's money will mean absolute shit to me until the rest of time at this point, because there's never going to be a player like this on the market ever again. Maybe you get lucky in 15 years, but some of us will be dead by then.
Yeah, I mean, this is the big one, as we've talked about. It's not often that a guy like Juan Soto becomes available at this age. We've gone over that before. But I think for me, when you talk about $750 million, I mean, that is unprecedented. That is historic. That would be the highest of all time of any player. And, when Ohtani got $700 million, and we call it is $700 million, but with how much it's deferred, it's kind of not like $700 million in a weird way, based off what is currently on this year's Dodgers payroll books. It's kind of not $700 million.
It's more like billions with what he's going to be making.
Exactly.
With what they're going to be making back by marketing him. I mean,
yes. So you have that going on, but also Ohtani pitches. And while Juan Soto is obviously great, I mean, don't get me wrong, he's top 5 player in the league hitter-wise to me, he doesn't pitch. So I think when we talk about like overall value, at this point, it's not so much like, okay, well, this is what Juan Soto's worth. I think it's just that it's gotten to, there's a need and there's a bidding war with a lot of big-time markets. When you're talking about both New York teams and Boston and a desperate Toronto with maybe the Dodgers, those are all the big players going at it, all at once. If it was just the Mets that were interested or just the Yankees or whatever, I don't think we're reaching that 750 million mark because then you're bidding against yourself. And we know he already turned down a very nice deal from the Nationals way back when he was a younger player. But overall, I think when you get to 750 million, that's more so just from a bidding war standpoint. I don't think it's more so just the value. It's like, I want him more than my competitor. And, it's more so on the Yankees perspective, because the other teams that are going to be finalists are in their division. Meanwhile, if the Dodgers are not really in the equation because they're so far under the number, all these teams are in the American League, so it doesn't have as much of a deal to the Mets. And another thing for the Yankees, like, this is a team that traded for him, like you said yesterday, knowing that he's a rental. You gave up some nice pieces to not retain him, and you don't win the World Series. That's pretty bad. I mean, that definitely is really badly for the Yankees. So they need him bad, but we've talked about this before with the contracts they already have committed. If we're talking 15 years, 750 million, and you're a team that while you don't spend crazy like the way the Dodgers do, it's a tough pill for the Yankees to swallow with the current Steinbrenner that is running the helm and the actual money that he has available to him compared to maybe a Steve Cohen. So I feel like we said, this is the guy that Steve Cohen really wants. I feel like some Met fans, as far as how much pressure they want to put on Steve Cohen, how they feel about him, I would still consider what happened with Correa. That was a done deal. I mean, Correa said yes. Mets said yes. Medicals eventually made the Mets say no. So that would have been another $300 million contract for your team. Yamamoto, you offered a very fair deal. He decided to go to the Dodgers. More convenient for him. Wants to be with Ohtani, maybe. Okay, fine. The Mets have offered plenty of big contracts, but what I've always liked is that when they offer 300 million plus and someone doesn't take it, they don't say, okay, well, let me just get the next best available guy and give him the same offer just because I need to get somebody. They clearly have this mindset where they evaluate a player. If they really want him, they're going to offer the most. If they get him, great. If they don't, then they're just going to wait for the next really good guy that they like a lot to offer a lot of money to. So I think, would it tarnish Cohen's legacy if he's not the highest bidder? Definitely. But I think overall, like you said, too many things align in the Mets' favor right now with how good the team is at this current moment, the age of Juan Soto, and how much money the Mets have committed at this current moment to their team, which isn't all that much when you think about it. This is the time to just go crazy and offer a ridiculous contract. And hopefully there's a lot of deferrals so that it doesn't prevent you from making those other moves. Because like we said, as great as Soto is, and you're offering this amount of money.
And I do think there will be. There definitely will be.
He doesn't guarantee you anything. I mean, he doesn't even guarantee you beating the Dodgers. Like, you still need to do other things. So in order to do those things, you're going to need more money. So there needs to be some deferrals in there for sure. So you could still allow yourself to realistically add more to the ball club. So he's a great start, but as we know, he's not just, okay, we signed him, now we're all good. So there definitely still is more work that needs to be done.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this with, we talked about this with Correa 2 years ago, where bringing a guy in like him, it also makes a lot of the rest of this roster flexible and expandable as well. Like, there could have been other assets they probably could have brought in here, such as, we talked about, possibly trading Beatty or moving Beatty to the left field. Maybe they trade this guy and try to get some pitching, pitching for some quantity and move things around here and make a lot of transactions because of having Correa there for multiple years there. It obviously didn't end up happening, but when you look at Juan Soto, there's other things that you might also be able to consider, such as Starling Marte. What do you do with him? Do you make him somewhat of a DH? Also, we all know that even if you were to get somebody like Soto, they're going to need to find somebody to protect him. So whether that is bringing back Pete Alonso, whether that is Jock Peterson, which I've been asking for I don't know, 7 centuries. We know that they're going to have to bring in some more complementary pieces to do that, such as well. But to have that lockdown of Lindor and Soto, I mean, I'm perfectly fine with having those two guys locked down, because Whether you agree or not, whether you think they're worth the money or not, because everyone is going to have to overpay with everything, no matter what. It looks like an overpay to everyone, to the typical man, because none of us touch this range of money whatsoever. But Soto and Lindor are two of the best players in all of baseball. And you could say the same thing about Soto and Judge, or Soto and Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Soto and Devers. Like, you can talk about those as well, but from the Mets' perspective, when you have the flexibility to do this, fucking do it. Like, that's the thing. I still will continue to have that feel of being a leverage horse, just because you're in competition with it being the Yankees, but I guess we're going to find out. Somebody in the chat said, newsflash, that Steve Cohen's money never meant shit. I guess we're going to find out in the next 72 hours. Let's just say that. I'm not agreeing with you. I'm not disagreeing with you in that regard. Let's actually get into the chat a little bit of what everybody has been saying, because there's so many different things, so many different angles that we can go off of. Lulu coming in here saying, first time watching you guys live. Usually watch on replay. Always enjoy your shows. Really appreciate that. Buzz Bass saying, if it's taking this long, he's probably going back to the Yankees. They always get their way. Listen, I think it was always going to be a long process. Like, it always was going to be something that's dragging out. We all know that Scott Boras loves his attention in this way. And he's a pain in the ass in that way. So let's just say that. Matt coming in here saying the larger the predictive bid gets, in this case, 15 years, $750 million today. The most confident he will be in a Met. I feel Cohen will go that high while other owners aren't willing to. It's possible because he could do it. He definitely could do it. The thing is, we haven't seen him do it yet. We haven't seen him just drive everything out of the water. We saw with Yamamoto, he matched the offer. It was the same offer as the Dodgers. Correa was such a weird situation where we got him at 3 a.m. So I really wouldn't put that in that category. So we really haven't seen him flex the wallet here. And I feel like this is the time where he's going to be able to do it. Mega Chrissy coming in here saying the only way the Mets don't get Soto is if he takes less money. He's going to offer the most. If 20 million or so isn't enough, he'll go up to 50 or more. I mean, I hope. And saying, I'm not worried. I'm 99% sure he'll be a Met. And listen, I hope that the confidence does boost in that way. We'll see what happens in that regard, because you just never know how far he's willing to go. And I always said that this is going to be the big factor for Cohen. How far is he willing to go from the other offers? Like, how far would he be willing to do something such as going 50 million, going 70 million over? We'll see what he does there. And listen, I think that another opinion that needs to be thrown out the window at this current moment, we know that Juan Soto most likely is not worth, you're not going to get that type of worth from Juan Soto. We know he's not the best defender. We know how good of a player he is. He's one of the best in all of baseball. He is in his prime right now. There is no contract that you are going to be happy with if he ends up going to the Mets. You will never be happy with the contract. You're paying for the prime years, and hopefully you get those prime years. We know that Juan Soto can definitely play on this stage. If it ends up being somewhat of a disaster, then we'll take it to different measures. But for those who are saying he's not worth $500 million, he's not worth $600 million, he's not worth $700 million, first of all, it doesn't matter. Second of all, it's all of how they kind of construct this team around him and Francisco Lindor. And I feel like we're also going to talk about that with the pivot, because I know exactly who the Mets possibly could pivot to if they get Soto. I know who the Mets could possibly pivot to if they don't get Soto. We all have these Plan B plans. But again, the Mets are in too deep at this current moment. If you want Steve Cohen to establish his presence here, and I'm pretty sure Andy Martino actually went specific with this early on today. He said this is their chance to establish themselves in not just in baseball, just in New York in general, because it's not really anything to do with, oh, the Yankees win, we always lose. Not really much to do with that, but it's also just kind of scooching over a seat for that Steinbrenner thing that has always been a thing for that legacy forever. You know, like that has been a thing for a long time. Steinbrenner likes a player, he goes and gets it. The Yankees like a player, they go and get him. This is also getting Juan Soto. It's not really for bragging rights for me, because like I only care about what the Mets do, but you would be taking him away from the Yankees. Like, this would be quite a statement made. And that's not the main reason why to do it, just to rub it in Yankees' faces. That's not really what I care about. But once again, Juan Soto is Juan Soto. You're not going to see a player like this. And I feel like it just lines up the best way. And I said this yesterday when we were live. I said it, you know, these types of pillars come in. If they come across your desk, it looks like Cohen has gotten his pillars, even though he has really not gotten, everybody on the market. And I'm sure we would love to see him be more aggressive than he already has been. But when it comes to the pillars, he got his franchise face in Francisco Lindor. He got his guy in David Stearns, who has been talked about multiple times. He got his, long tenure manager here in Carlos Mendoza, who I believe is a big factor for this team, more than like pretty much any manager is to any team right now, because he's such a big part of this new thing they're trying to bring up. Now you get to 2025, Soto lines up here with money coming off the books. I mean, that's where it is lined up right here. And this is it. I mean, this is the next pillar to come through for this franchise to get into that sustainable winning, because we just have not seen that yet. And hopefully it's not the mindset of after 2022 where they're just bringing everybody back and they regressed. If you're not getting better, you're getting worse. We say this all the time. You add Juan Soto to this team that just went to the National League Championship Series. I mean, come on now. That's something. Let's just say that. That's something to build on.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great start. And when you have, like you said, a guy in Lindor who's MVP runner-up, you have a guy in Soto who's a perennial MVP caliber player. To have two of those on your ball club is great. Like we've talked about, starting pitching, having Sang on a reasonable deal is very good. You hope Sprode is in the mix. And you have maybe a emerging star in Vientos and a young catcher with a lot of power. There's a lot to like on this team as it's already constructed. And there's only more that's going to be added to it. And with Lindor here for a lot of years, and if you get Soto, it's going to be for a lot of years. Hopefully there's not a ton of opt-outs and things like that, because then that becomes very stressful. And you're like, we do this multiple times. I kind of want this to be one and done. Like, we got him and we don't need to worry about this Soto sweepstakes anymore. But I just think overall that if you have those guys for such a long period of time, you give yourself a chance for a long time. And then you're just kind of trying to add those other, like we call complementary pieces, long-term at reasonable deals, build that sustained winning. That is really what should be the ultimate goal, is just making sure that you have a chance every year. Like we've talked about so much in the Met history of, you did it one year and then all the other years, there was nothing there. You weren't able to build on it. That's what we want to see, is that like this team can show that continuing of improvement year after year is just very, very important. And someone of Soto's caliber allows you to do that. I mean, he is that good, but like you said, protecting him is going to be very important, because if you want to make sure that you get the 700, whatever it is, your top dollar value out of him, he needs to be protected. Especially in the case of Juan Soto. I mean, you can say that for any star player, but especially with Juan Soto, with how willing he is to take the walk. I mean, he has that unmatched discipline and eye at the plate that he's totally willing to walk. I mean, even with a guy who could win the MVP in Aaron Judge batting behind him, teams were still walking Soto a whole ton because Judge was struggling in the postseason. So you have got to make sure that, Soto is going to be on base. I know to some fans, and, me as an old man, you may look at the batting average and you say, oh, the guy hits 285. How could he be worth max money? He's not a great hitter. But when I tell you one of the best on base percentages you'll ever see, always over 400, all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, this guy's always doing something for me offensively. So if Soto is on base very frequently, this gives you a lot of chances for scoring. So when Soto does get on base via walk, that's one base he's not going to steal. So he's going to be at first base and stay there. You need to get some guys that bring him around home plate. It cannot be singles hitters. It needs to be true power hitters that, teams are going to be careful with Soto just in general. But you want the pitcher to be even extra careful because they say to themselves, okay, well, if I walk Soto, now I got to face this next guy with a runner on and maybe Lindor's on already. It just changes the entire dynamic, the entire game plan of what an opposing team does against you. So that's kind of those underlying things where people may look at certain stuff and be like, oh, is Soto really that good? If you surround him with a very good lineup that's deep, you could get a lot out of him.
Yeah. I mean, somebody brought this up. True Row, I think I said that correctly, saying you can splash 50 million AAV on Soto and theoretically have $1 million left to spend. Not to mention, I don't think there's definitely going to be deferred money on this. So they're probably going to put the luxury tax hit. Maybe it's like 40 million, 38 million, something like that of deferred payments because the Mets are going to have to work it around if they were to end up signing Soto to that incredible amount. They're going to have to defer money. I mean, they just have to. They even did do yes, we know that the Dodgers have pretty much been abusing it, but let's not forget they also did the deferred money for Edwin Diaz. What was it, a few years ago? Which, to be honest, it kind of reimbursed them when he did get hurt, and it kind of put them in a better situation for that. But when it came to, when they arranged these contracts, that really, it's all really has to do with the AAV at the current moment, because you know that every single year in and year out, for I don't know, maybe for the next 6 or 7 years, if you were to bring in Juan Soto, he is going to produce at a ridiculous level. And I know there's always the pessimistic guys, people that will always like, oh, well, he gets a big contract and he just stops. This guy is a 26-year-old free agent right now. I mean, again, this is just a one-of-a-kind type of thing that you're looking at. Now, there is some other things that I do want to get into in regards to the Soto stuff, but I do want to push it aside for now because we did get one little piece of news in the Mets category, and that being Luis Severino. Luis Severino has now moved on to greener pastures such as money, and the the Athletics of Sacramento resignated for temporary holdings. Put that on a t-shirt. Sign Luis Severino to a 3-year, $67 million deal. And with that, him getting the qualifying offer, the Mets will get a 4th-round draft pick in compensation to that. And the A's spent money, and it is the richest contract. It is the richest contract in A's history, in franchise history. One little tidbit of information: I believe that the next wealthiest contract was $66 million, given to ours truly, Eric Chavez. So, Luis Severino, moving on, going to the Athletics. I can't say Oakland because apparently they're not Oakland anymore. I have a little bit of a different take on this, and not really anything in regards to the Mets perspective, but Frank, I know you have a lot to say in regards to this. I'll tell you, I was just, I wasn't home when this happened. I'm like, am I reading this correctly? The A's? Okay, interesting. So it's, what is it? It's 3 years, $67 million, and a player option in year 3. So that means it is pretty much fully guaranteed to him if he wants it.
Yeah, this is just confusing to me. It's confusing to me from every angle. I'm confused what the Athletics are doing. I'm confused what Severino is doing, and I'm just a little confused with what the Mets are doing, because when people say, "Oh, well, Severino, he took the money." I mean, look at that contract. That's the biggest in Oakland A's history. The New York Mets offered Luis Severino $21 million for this season via the qualifying offer. And Luis Severino declined that qualifying offer because he said, "You know what? I could make more than 21 million." So what is he going to make? $22.3 million. So he declined the qualifying offer to make $1 million more and go to a team that, they were pretty good in the second half. Okay. But overall, not very good and don't have a history of being very good and are going to spend a lot more money to be very good. And like you just mentioned, right now in Sacramento could be somewhere else next year. Plus, here's the thing that people I just don't think are really talking about enough. It's a 3-year deal with an opt-out after 2. And like I've talked about, when was the last time an Oakland A has finished their career with the team? They always trade them before it's time to actually pay him again. I could very easily see a scenario where Severino pitches pretty good for Oakland next year, particularly. They trade him at the deadline, and then he goes somewhere else. So I just think that Severino, just from a Severino standpoint, he was a Yankee for all these years. He comes to the Mets and says, "Oh, this was so convenient for me. I was ready in New York. I get to stay in New York. Now I'm going to, for $1 million more, move to Sacramento, and then maybe have to move again, and then maybe have to move again for when Sacramento trades me." So for me, and I left a team that I thought I really loved, a team that was a winner. Why would I leave all that for an extra $1 million? And then from the Mets standpoint, if I offered this guy 21 million and he left me for 22 million, if I liked him enough to pay him 21, why didn't I just pay him 22 to keep the guy? Because I know there's like this thought going around that, oh, the Mets aren't going to pay starting pitching and they're not going to do long-term deals and not going to do this, not going to do that. Listen, a 2-year deal, a 3-year deal is not a long-term deal. It really isn't, especially when there's an opt after 2. So I don't want to hear this because I understand what the Mets have done. And, if you could pull it off year after year, it looks like a good move. You sign high upside guys who are young in Manaea, in Severino. You get good seasons after them. You offer the qualifying offer and you get draft picks. And you just do it this next cycle. Maybe Montas is the next guy. You want to make that cycle. Fine. But I'm of the belief that you cannot build a rotation every single year and get away with what you're doing every single year. Eventually, you have to kind of say, all right, these are some guys that I do need to lock down long-term and just kind of keep for a little longer. And I think 2 years for $1 million more or 3 years, I don't think that was a tough ask for the Mets. I think that's pretty fair value for Severino. I don't think this was this massive overpay that Severino left for all this money. I'm just overall very confused from every aspect of it.
I'm a little bit less confused because I feel like I'm kind of in the realm of like, yeah, this kind of makes sense from a lot of different aspects. It was shocking because I didn't expect the A's of all teams to do what they did, but I kind of did, but I'll get into that in a second. Johnny K coming in here saying, Sevy, 30 years old, coming after a good comeback season. How do you choose to play in a minor league stadium for the crappy A's? I'll tell you why. He got a 3-year deal here. He got he's got $67 million now in his lap, right? The Mets, yes, they offered similar AAV with the qualifying offer, but he also has a little bit more security, somewhat, of being on an actual contract of guaranteed money. With the A's, yes, it's possible. Maybe they do end up trading him. Who knows? But this is also another thing that we all kind of anticipated with the A's, which is disgusting. It sucks that it is the whole reality of what went on with the Oakland A's, and John Fisher should be forced to sell that team because he is a disgrace to baseball. This is basically all we saw. Whenever the A's got out of Oakland, they were 100% going to start spending money again. We knew exactly that was going to happen, and John Fisher was going to look like the fuckwad that we all knew that he has been since the beginning of time. He wanted to get out of Oakland. He sought all this bullshit saying that they tried to stay in Oakland, but no, you were just begging the city of Oakland to pay for your new stadium, which if you take a look around Oakland, they got better things to look at as of right now and to focus on. We all knew that this was going to happen. I personally don't know if it's going to happen if he ends up getting traded by the A's at any point, because I do think that they're going to start spending money, and it's disgusting that they are doing that right now after what they just did to their fans, which is disgraceful. And not to mention that being A's fans right now, who are some of the best fans in baseball, who do not deserve that one bit. But we all knew that this was possibly going to happen in regards to the A's. It happening with Luis Severino, didn't see that coming. We saw that they were attached to Walker Buehler for a second, which we knew that he's probably going to cost a little bit less because he's kind of on the Severino path from last year where he's looking to bounce back, coming off of injuries. So when it comes to Severino, I didn't even want to give him the qualifying offer. So even though he was a 1-year deal, and yes, maybe they're looking at, the draft pick compensation, that's fine. I didn't even want to give him that because I was afraid that possibly maybe he would take it, but then also I'm looking at it from, well, he's going to look for a long-term deal after what he just did, especially looking at the market right now where, after looking at what John Gray got a few years ago, after seeing Taijuan Walker get 4 years, I mean, it's insane to me as to where the A's are looking to just slap their fans in the face metaphorically at this current moment. But I am not surprised that the Mets just passed it over to a way that, yes, I know that this project stuff kind of stinks in that realm, but I trust David Stearns has made these decisions well enough where he can give you these quality pieces. Maybe he will whiff on one of these guys. But again, I know that the whole thought of pushing your luck with Frankie Montas. I'm going to tell you right now, Mets fans, when we signed Luis Severino a year ago, and you can go back to it, we were on stream. Even my co-host of that stream, Andrew, I don't know how much of it he was joking about, but this guy, a more than 6.5 ERA last year, labeled himself as the worst pitcher in all of baseball. And I guarantee you a majority of Mets fans, even some that are watching it, and I don't blame you at face value, didn't like the move. So I'm not saying that Frankie Montas is going to be Luis Severino. Luis Severino was great. He was a key to our October run. Absolutely. But it's kind of in that same realm of okay, let's try it. You can try it again. And to be honest, I think Montas is replacing what you're trying to get from what you were getting from Quintana. He's younger. And then they're going to try to trade for one and then sign another one. But that's a different story in regards to that. And then there's also this. This is what I mean with the A's. They're being pieces of shit right now. This is what John Fisher was expected to do. We've had a lot of people talk about, well, he's going to move and then he's going to spend money like nothing happened. Trust me, A's fans are going to remember what you did. So, unless they start locking in some of their young guys and buying out RBers, they're still going to be shitting in that way. And for them to give the richest deal right after ripping the Band-Aid off of basically ripping fans from their homes, it's a douchebag thing to do. But when it comes to the Mets, I am fine with it. Again, I've talked about Luis Severino in my concern of him keeping this going. The health still does scare me in that way. I think that there's still some things that I don't think are going to translate to a year afterwards. I feel a little bit opposite of that in Shamanaya. I've been very advocate on that. Again, but for what it's worth, Luis Severino was a great Met. He was great for us. He was one of the big contributors to us making that October run. He was great. I will always be thankful for that. There's no hard feelings whatsoever. Again, from me, at least. I don't know if everyone's upset in regards to that. But again, if there is a team that gives me a qualifying offer, in that regard, somebody offers me a 3-year deal, I don't care who it is, $67 million, I'm fucking taking that. If that lands into my lap, I'm taking that right there. And when it comes to Severino, you never know. Pitchers are on the move as well. So maybe he's out of the A's organization before that contract is expiring. But I think, again, I was okay with letting him go. I really thought that it was a one and done thing. I talked about it as soon as when we signed him a year ago, that this was a 1-year deal. I liked it, but I didn't go anywhere past it because I knew that this was going to be a one and done type of thing with Luis Severino. I mean, if there's anything else that you want to add, because I know that it seems fishy, but not really much of this surprises me, to be honest.
I just think, to me, it's really a bad job by Severino's agent and kind of Severino himself of declining the qualifying offer, because they're saying...
I don't think so. Because $67 million, come on, I mean, again, $67 million for being a middling rotation piece.
No, but what I'm looking at, this next coming year, right? I'm talking about the 2025 season. The New York Mets offered me $21 million for 1 year. And I said, no, I'm worth more than that. So I'm going to decline this and look for offers elsewhere. And then in a very short amount of time, I settled for $1.3 million more for a totally different organization. What I'm saying is that if I'm Severino, if that's what my market was, I might have accepted the qualifying offer, had a better season, hopefully, and then actually got a good deal, because I still think that 22 per is not that amazing of a contract. So I think it might have been better for Severino's agent to take the offer, since the market wasn't that great for him, to hopefully get a better offer later on. Because what's going to happen is that, maybe he goes 2 years, he opts out, and now he's a few years older, now looking for another multi-year deal. So I just think overall 3 years is not all that much. And then if you're the Mets and you didn't love him all that much, you didn't want to offer him 3 years, well, then kind of why did you offer him the qualifying offer? Maybe he could have accepted it. You might have been stuck with him. So that's where I'm kind of torn, is I just don't think, I look at a lot of times when guys decline the qualifying offer, they do it to get more money elsewhere, especially with the qualifying offer going up. I mean, the QO used to be like 18, that was 21. So with it going up, you decline because you say, okay, I'm going to get more elsewhere. But he didn't get all that much more, and he didn't get from a better team. He went to a worse situation, in my opinion.
I think the thought of it right now is the fact that I think the thought of him right now, the Mets on the pitching market, yes, we know that we don't know what they're going to end up doing. But with this pitching market, pitching's expensive. And the overall total value to AAV is how you kind of manipulate it in that sense. I think that Severino got a way better deal of what the Mets offered him. And even though, yes, it's the A's and they've been a dumpster fire for the past few years and it's an awful situation, listen, if you get paid, if they offer you that type of money, I would 100% take it. I don't think they're looking at it from an AAV point. That is more of just how he is valued, because I do think that he is valued in that way where he's a number 3 in a rotation, which is what $21 to $21 million usually gets you, around that range. I think he just wanted a little bit more of the security of money that he can make, because maybe there's a possibility that, maybe he just doesn't pitch as good as he did last year, which is this concern that I fucking have about him. I think that when it comes to, Severino, I mean, listen, I'm happy for him. It's good for him because, again, like he went through a lot these past few years of his injuries, lots of reinvention with his arsenal, tons of things. I mean, he went through a quite a gauntlet, let's just say, of life. Let's just say that. I think that he earned this. He 100% did. But like I've said multiple times, I ain't giving him that. I am not giving him that. And I was still hesitant to even give him the qualifying offer, to be honest. Because I think that there was a possibility that maybe he did take it because of the words that were coming out of his mouth. But then I also go back to the other situation where, I mean, money talks in every single way. We already know that. And then we get back to this guy. Let's not forget, at the end of the year, it would be a tough pill to swallow if I can't come back to the Mets. Well, guess what? That pill was worth $22 million from the Angels, and you swallowed it pretty well. I'm pretty sure that got to his bank account, no matter how well he performed. So yes, it's a little bit different because Syndergaard didn't get a multi-year deal. But the Mets offered him the qualifying offer, which he deserved after pitching 2 innings in a span of 2 years. The Angels gave him more. Then he just left. Out of here. Left. Probably a better decision for the Mets to not match it, because we've seen what Syndergaard has done recently. He is awful now. He's out of the league at this current moment. So I'm not saying that Severino is going to be out of the league, because I still think he is a good pitcher. But again, I just, that's the type of stuff I'm just not paying. I'm not giving it to him. And listen, I think it's a lot different, when it comes to a guy like Sean Manaea, who also got a quite lucrative deal, which I'm a little scared to know what the A's actually offered him. I'm scared of what the A's are offering a player. I mean, this is insane. It's Freaky Friday at this current moment. But I mean, I think at this point, that's it. And I prepared in the way that Severino was not going to be here next year. I knew that this was going to be a one and done, or expected this to be a one and done, and it was. So there you go.
It's fair. I mean, it's kind of like you guys were talking about with the Montas signing. It's more so like, all right, well then who do you get instead? I mean, that's ultimately what it comes down to, is that if you say, okay, well, I'm not going to bring back Severino, I'm going to bring in Montas. Well, what else am I supplementing it with? Because there still needs to be a better, at least one, hopefully two, better starting pitchers added to this New York Mets team, whether it's via free agency or trade or both. It does need to happen. They need at least a number two. At least a number two. Hopefully a one, but at least a number two still needs to be added to this team. No doubt about it.
I've talked about it many, many times before, and I will continue to say it. The Mets, for the last few years, they have been switching in and out of their rotation. Lots of moving parts, of course. And it's the right thing to do these short-term deals. Catch lightning in a bottle, get value for them, whatever it is, so you can have a lot more of a pivot point. I understand the lack of stability, but the way that you get the lack of stability isn't signing big free agents, just chucking money at Corbin Burns or chucking money at Blake Snell. That's not the way that you do it. The way you do it is that you develop your own arms. And that's what they're going to have to do. And if they can't develop those arms, they're going to have to keep doing this. And then some people are going to be like, well, we can't catch lightning in a bottle. Develop your own fucking pitching then, because it is expensive. It is so damn expensive. Not every single time that a Corbin Burns hits the market, we're just going to be there to give him $45 million a year and call it a day. It's just not a way to run the team. It's not a sustainable way to run the team in terms of the rotation, because, again, if you're talking about free agency of your rotation right now, let's say you pay an ace, which Kodai Senga, I still consider him an ace. $35 million probably you're going to give to an ace. A frontline piece, I don't know, $27, $28 million, maybe even $30 million in that regard. A mid-rotation piece, what Severino just got, $21 to $25 million, $21 to $23 million. Less than $20 million is your starting pitcher 4. Starting pitcher 5, very similar to what, I don't know, Taijuan Walker got, $15 million, $13 million if you want to say, and maybe inflate that a little bit of what Severino got last year. It's expensive. It's an expensive market. I mean, I don't know what to say at this point in regards to, giving $17 million, because I think I saw somebody, I don't know, it's like the Montas contract sucks. That's what he would get no matter what. Again, I understand you can look at it from face value that maybe he wasn't great. I mean, he had a near 5 earned run average last year. He wasn't fantastic. There's still upside there as to where you can get some of the value. But as a starting pitcher 4, that's kind of how, that's kind of how you kind of look at it. I think that's pretty much the easy way to look at it. And I think that you do need to trust Stearns in that regard. Excuse me. But anyways, Rosie K saying Mets have to bring Manaea back. I do think that Manaea is probably the best path as of right now, signing him and then maybe going to the trade market, specifically that arm in Seattle that I do really like on the trade market, because I think that he covers a lot of bases from, being a frontline starter and giving you innings and being a workhorse. But I digress in that way. When it comes to the pitching staff, I didn't see Severino. Severino I saw as a little bit less likely to stay. We'll see what happens. What happens with Sean Manaea, and it's going to look like an overpay even if they do bring him back. It could be possible that maybe you get 3 years. Maybe it's 3 years, $85 million, and you're like, okay, this is a lot. This is a lot for Manaea, but the market was set. Manaea was better than Luis Severino this year. So he's going to get more, whether it is in AV or whether it is in total value. Total value, if, again, in terms of a mid-rotation guy, which Severino, a number 3 in a rotation. We know that he pitched like a number 3 this year. That's what number 3s get in terms of AAV. And then any other term is just an added bonus. And that's what he got from the Athletics. So congratulations to him. Listen, it's good for him because, again, like I said, it's been rough for him these past few years. For him to bounce back the way that he did, there's no hard feelings. I'm happy for him. I wish him the best. I'm not giving him that. It's not personal whatsoever. Again, I think that, this whole thing regarding, well, he wanted to be back and he liked being here with this organization. $67 million will change that. 100%. It will change that completely. Again, baseball's a business in that way. I don't know how to really say it, and I understand the frustration. I get it, but again, I think that this is pretty much kind of what I expected from all aspects. Where he was going to get paid, and I wasn't really willing to be that team that paid him that type of amount because I'm not giving 3 hard years to somebody like Luis Severino. It's just not going to happen. Walter coming in here saying, and we can actually get into this topic for a little bit. How do you feel about a six-man rotation of sign and trade a frontline starter, sign and trade a frontline starter, Senga, Montas, Peterson, and Holmes? Now, Clay Holmes we did talk about yesterday a little bit when I was here. I know that was a topic of discussion that a lot of people were jumping off the rails of regarding Clay Holmes and bringing him in as a possible starting pitcher with the Mets' interest. Here's how I feel. I'll put out my statement and I'll go to you on this. I don't hate it, but it's gonna have to be a 6-man rotation for him to ramp up in that way. I think that he has great stuff. I think that the connection between whether it is Carlos Mendoza or that pitching coach they brought in with pitch design, I think that will definitely help, but it's not going to be proven in that way. It's something to think about. I personally would go after Sean Manaea. That's just my preference because I think that he can sustain and be a middle of the rotation type of guy. But if you're looking at a guy like Clay Holmes, that's kind of the type of guy that you would probably add in here when you're trying to go back to a 6-man rotation, because there was a look of a 6-man rotation last year, but Senga was not healthy for it, so they didn't really need to do it. So I don't know what your thoughts on this are. I know that you have some criticisms of Clay Holmes, the reliever, but as a starter, listen, your guy Seth Lugo, he turned out pretty well in Kansas City when they gave him that contract, so who knows?
Exactly. I mean, like I said, as a reliever, I don't trust him with his tendency for the long ball, but I think as a starting pitcher, I'm more open to it, particularly like you mentioned a little while ago, how much it costs for starting pitching in general. Yeah. So I think that if you pay a guy like Clay Holmes to be a starter, but not pay him quote unquote starter money, that's a pretty savvy move that fits the Stearns model of take a guy with some upside and try to see if you could turn him into a better guy and make more value out of what you paid for. But I agree with you that he should be in a 6-man rotation. And honestly, I think the Mets kind of need to do a 6-man rotation anyway, especially if Senga is going to be here. Yeah. Number one, they needed a 6-man rotation regardless for Senga with his transition coming from Japan, their days of rest, that whole ordeal. But also the injuries that Senga had last year. Like, I talked
Yeah.
about earlier, he had multiple injuries this year. So I think in an effort to try to keep him a little healthier, a 6-man rotation is always a good idea. We've talked about the benefits of it a ton during the course of the season on this podcast. So I think Clay Holmes makes a perfectly fine number 6 starter as a guy that, maybe you build him up to be at least 4 innings and then 5 innings and then see where it goes. I think you can get pretty good value out of that. And that's the kind of guy I would probably be looking for in a 6-man. So I definitely like that move. I got no quarrels about it. I'm all for it. I think overall, as far as Walter's question of adding 2 frontline guys and moving Senga to the 3,
yeah, I don't
as
see
much
that
as I
happening.
wish that would happen, I don't see that happening. I could see the Mets getting, like I said, maybe a
Senga's going
number.
to be in your top 2 no matter what. And he
Exactly.
deserves to be in that top 2.
Exactly.
Again,
So
I know the health is a concern, but I mean, when he has been healthy, he's been your top guy. I mean, that he was your top guy. And whether you don't look him at it as a 1A, more of a 1B, that's fine, whatever. But
exactly.
I mean, he's a legitimate starting pitcher. We know that he is. He just needs to be on the field to do so. And I think that's kind of what has set everyone off. Definitely in the playoffs, it was a little bit concerning as well of what we saw. But I'm willing to ride that thing out of Senga and giving him the trust of being a 1B at least. I think that the best way that they fill this rotation is, trading for one of a number 1 or trading for one of a 1B and signing the other one or vice versa. Like, that's kind of how I see it, but continue. Course.
Yeah. So I think, when it comes to, you look at like the free agent starting pitchers with Blake Snell being off the board, I think that does make this a little murky, so to speak. And I feel that, let's say the Mets get Soto. I mean, I guess we have to play that scenario for my point. But if the Mets get Soto, they're not getting Corbin Burns. Like, that is not an option. I think even Max Fried is a bit unrealistic if you have Soto. So, like you said, if you're going to get a 1B, and obviously I love a guy like Freddie Peralta, he would have to be via trade and have a much more, and you're able to get a guy who's 1B talent at not 1B price for the contract. Now, yes, you're going to have to part with some young pieces, and depending who that is, we'll get into if it happens. But I think overall, with how everything is shaping up and the way the market's set up, the 1B would have to be via trade, and then your mid-rotation piece that's in front of Montas, that's like that number 3 guy, would have to be in free agency. Now, whether that's our buddy Evaldi or somebody else, we'll see. Another guy we talked about, Shane Bieber, I still like him as a 1-year candidate. Lorenzen as maybe a 6 guy if you don't get someone like Clay Holmes. So there's a few different ways they can still approach this because there are still a good amount of names on the board. But I wouldn't predict Burns. I wouldn't predict Fried. I do think they could get somebody via trade, and then whoever else they add via free agency, we'll see. But even with Senga's injuries, I don't see them kind of moving him to a number 3 spot. I just don't see them doing as much as I wish they would, because I always talk about how important starting pitching is. I wish they would really, really just go all in for the starting pitching, get a bunch of frontline guys and make things so much smoother for you. I don't see it happening. So I think overall that's kind of where you're going to end up. And for me, I'm just kind of hoping that with what happened in the postseason with Senga was more so just that he was not healthy. I mean, the velocity was down. He was public that his mechanics were out of sorts. So you know what? You've got a few months to work on your mechanics. So by the time the regular season rolls around, your mechanics better be in working order. The velo better be up a little bit, because we're going to need you to pitch like a frontline guy. So, I mean, that's kind of how I see it shaking up.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I have more trust in Senga than I think a lot of people do at this current moment, considering their last impression of him was that awful start that he had against the Dodgers. I think it was game one, right? I mean, I personally think that I think he's going to be fine because I feel like he's just, he's a professional pitcher in that way, and he's going to be able to compose himself in that way, the way that he was able to do it in 2023. That I'm not worried about. I'm okay if you want to bring in another frontline arm, if that makes people a little bit more comfortable in that way. I understand if you don't want Senga to be your number 1. And listen, I think injuries, again, that's very, very fair. again. But when it comes to, Senga, we know that he has the frontline stuff, and we know that he could be a frontline piece. I'm not saying that he's just a bona fide ace right now and guaranteed to give you, the 200 innings that a bona fide ace like Corbin Burns does give you. But I'm just saying that, they're going to put the trust in him. They have him for the next 3 seasons. And I do believe that, again, with how the pitching is kind of rattled in with a guy like David Stearns, I think that they're going to have it decently under control. Let's just say that. And Senga is just way too talented to just completely fall off the hook. He just needs to be healthy. And listen, I think that when it comes to Senga and it comes to all of your arms, you take that risk with everyone. I mean, yes, we talk about some pitchers being more injured than others, and some guys are iron horses or whatever, but no matter what, as they age, as they get mileage on their arm, every single pitcher is injury prone. We talk about this all the time. The pitching motion is not a regular motion. So one little tweak, they are done. One time they are on top of the world. Jacob deGrom, incredible. The next, they're injured. They're out. They've been out for multiple years now. And I mean, that's literally it. And that's the main reason as to why, again, I'm not really that aggressive to just, let's get Corbin Burns. Let's get this guy. Let's get this top line guy. Let's go after every single guy right now. Be so aggressive because the Dodgers are doing it, even though they have a lot more of a plan laid out. I'm not aggressive to do that because I know that there is the risk involved and you have to stay flexible. And that's just my mindset on pitching because, there's only a few exceptions in that matter, and some of them are not available. Would I have taken the risk with Jacob deGrom a few years ago? I've been public and said that I would have. Didn't end up working out. So, again, that's it. Right here. Pitchers are like running backs. To be honest, I think they're even more fragile than running backs because every single thing, week to week, who's going to be healthy? Who's going to be out there? I mean, the amount of pitching injuries, especially
running backs don't sign 10-year deals or 8-year deals or 7-year deals. So,
no, they don't.
Yes, they don't have as much value past age 30, but they don't sign. It's the long-term investment. Yeah. It's like that.
It's the top 1%. It's the top 1% that get those types of deals. Yamamoto got the 12-year deal. He had injury history. We didn't know because, again, there was the adjustments from Japan as well. We didn't know. There's only like a few sets where it's like you'll find somebody who's going to be healthy and you can give this long-term deal to, and it's just, there's so many things that need to fall into place in order for a pitcher to give you what they give you. You just never know because one day they're dominant. The other day they're not as effective. The other day they're not healthy. That's just how it is. So that's how I look at it as to where frontline guy, I mean, great. He's out there. And if we get him, great. But there's always risk involved. And that's why I'm okay with, Frankie Montas for 2 years, Luis Severino for a year, Sean Manaea with an opt-out or something like that. I just don't want to be tied down to a disaster such as that. I just don't want to be in that realm of that. They gave a 5-year deal to Senga. Of course, he's making money of a starting pitcher 5 right now, but when it comes to just bringing in an overall rotation, again, you have to develop your own pitching. You have to, because David Stearns is still going to bring in these flyer guys every single year, and he's going to piss you off every single year. He's most likely going to be right about all of them because he knows what he's talking about. He's not an idiot. But when it comes to, bringing in some of these guys and plugging them into the rotation, why don't we develop some of our pitching? Let's see if Brandon Sproat pans out. Maybe you have somebody that goes into that rotation. Maybe if there's somebody else that pans out, Jonah Tong or something. Blade Tidwell has a bounce back. Who knows? There are guys that you could possibly find on the cheap who are your prospects that could pan out in that way. Jose Butto was not regarded as a highly ranked prospect. You still got quite value from him starting the way that he did, he had some quality for you, and now he's looking like a legitimate relief pitcher for you. So you need those homegrown guys. It needs to happen. That's the only way that you can do that, no matter what. I understand that the Dodgers just buy everyone and buy everything in sight, but they also have some homegrown talent as well, and that's what they built that foundation on as well. I mean, Walker Buehler, homegrown. Clayton Kershaw, homegrown. I mean, he's a different story. He's been around for a long time. Dustin May, homegrown. What was it? Who else? Gavin Stone, homegrown. I mean, there's tons there, and they need to have that type of foundation in order to do that. Mets don't have that yet. And again, a guy like Juan Soto, that can definitely help you pin things down a little bit. You know, it's going to take a while for the Mets to be that sustainable winner because they haven't been it yet. Like we've talked about it before. And yes, the pitching is the pitching, but stringing these things together, I mean, that's literally just that's what they're going to have to do if they don't have guys developing the way that they do in their farm system. It's literally just how it's going to be. And Christian Scott, we all know, you know, that's another thing. We know he has some promise, but there's still things that he needs to work on. So if guys pan out, that's good. You guys have years of control on them, and that's the best way to do it. Guys who are young, guys who are cost controllable. You need that.
Yeah, and Truro makes a good point about potentially trading Gilbert. I mean, I think that's something that you have to consider if you have a Juan Soto because of how long Nimmo is locked down for. So it's like if you have Nimmo locked down in one corner, you're gonna have Soto locked down in another corner for a few years before, if it is 15-year deal, eventually he will be a DH in those last few years, hopefully.
Probably. Yes.
I hope that we can at least get a good amount of years in the outfield, even though he's not good out there. I understand the range and he's lazy and doesn't want to run into a wall. I get all that. But for now, he's going to have to play the outfield. But you are going to need, if Gilbert's going to be here, he's going to have to be in center field. And if he's not really a center fielder, and we know how much Stearns cares about really good defense in center field, if he's someone you have to trade to get that starting pitch that we're talking about to be your 1B, if it's a Crochet or somebody like that, I'm willing to do that. I would rather maybe put a Gilbert in than maybe a McLean or a Tongue or, some, like we said, just because of how important it is to have the young starting pitching and controllable team control. I might be more willing to do that. I mean, if I have to go, let's say off the top of my head, if I have to go Jet, Gilbert, Beatty, plus something else to get a Crochet, and I already have Soto, I'm considering that. I'm thinking about that deal.
We'll see. I mean, I don't know. I think, listen, yes, there is guys who are in the farm system that, maybe they don't have a place here if they bring in player X or player Y. But, it's a good problem to have because you have those assets to move for other assets. I mean, that's why we always talk about never drafting for need or never bringing in for need or, those are assets that are valuable. Those are pieces, that you could maybe plug in if they earn the job or, maybe you trade them away. I think that even though the Dodgers are loaded up on pitching right now, it's not like they have no other pitchers in their farm system. They have other pitching there, even though they have, the superstars in, Mookie Betts or Shohei Ohtani. It's not like they don't have, other guys who can hit in that. I mean, there's guys in the farm system like, the Mets have drafted first baseman multiple times these last few years. They didn't just not draft a first baseman because Pete Alonso is here.
Well, how many times did we talk about how many infielders they've drafted? I mean, you talk about, Colin Houck while you already have a Jet, and then you add in an Acuna to the mix. You have a Ronnie. You have all the other, 17-year-old, 18-year-olds, that you have that you've got via trade. They're also shortstops, but maybe you can move them to other positions. But with baseball, it's more so you take best player available. You always draft for a position because what you need right now, those guys are not going to be ready for a few years, and you might need something else in those few years that you drafted for way back when. So it's a little different. It's not so much like a football or basketball where it's like, oh, I need this position, let me just draft it. It doesn't necessarily work like that. But I think but just generally speaking, when you have a bunch of guys available, you go shortstop, outfield, starting pitching, because you can move a shortstop around. There's 3 outfield spots and a DH to some extent, and you're always going to need pitching. So I feel like just in general, those are always smart choices because eventually you probably are going to need one of those things.
I mean, they're premium positions too. I mean, with pitching, it's pretty much become the premium position that it is now. And then, shortstop is usually the best athlete on the team, and we know defense up the middle and a premium position that gives you a lot of value. We know that Francisco Lindor brings you a lot of value as a shortstop from all aspects. It's definitely one of the most toolsy. Center field, premium position as well. We see a lot of catchers get drafted. We saw a lot of catchers get drafted in the first round these last few years. Adley Rutschman is one. Kevin Parada, who we won't even mention. We've seen a lot of catchers get drafted the way that they have. So, I mean, again, I think, but like, I mean, the thing is that in regards to the farm system, it's a good problem to have, because again, even if you have these guys who you don't draft for need, maybe another team needs that in some other regard, and you could trade for that. So again, it's always good to have the quantity of assets and not just, well, the quality of players. Let's build my fantasy team and, cash out right afterwards. I mean, I think that that's kind of something that flies a little bit below the shelf. So the next time when you see the Mets draft a shortstop, because we have Francisco Lindor, that doesn't mean that they don't know what they're doing. Okay, it's usually the best player available is what you go with, or the slot money or whatever. But I'm not here to talk about drafting in this whole realm of everything. But in regards to everything, I mean, we could swing back a little bit to Soto and everything that has been going on here. Another thing about another point that I can put out here is with Drew Gilbert. I do think that he still has the leeway to play center field now. Tyrone Taylor, again, he's not an everyday player. Jose Siri, he's not a stalwart player again. Like, they're going to find a way to give Drew Gilbert the leeway. And that's the main reason as to why they're not trading for Mike Trout right now. Like they're going to give the chance. They're going to give him the chance to do so. I do think that in regards to some of these other prospects, they're going to have to ship a certain second baseman out of here. But, that's a different discussion for a different time. But as for with Soto, some other reports that have come up, I'm sure that we have had other things go on. The Boston Red Sox, who are in the Soto sweepstakes right now, it looks like they have requested a meeting with Boris and Soto where they will be given the price that would get a deal finalized. And in that article, I did see saying that there is some fear that Cohen would outbid them by $50 million or more in that regard. So we'll see what happens at this point. We also did get from John Heyman on the Michael Kay show about there being no indication that the Mets are blowing the field away. And like I said earlier, if they don't, that's going to lose you Juan Soto, personally. I think that that's where he said, I don't know that there's going to be there is a major separation at this point. There is no indication that the Mets are blowing the field away on current Juan Soto offers. So you never know in regards to that. Troy saying, are we pulling an all-nighter stream? No, we will not be. But we will be going live. We probably will go live tomorrow because there's going to be tons of stuff that comes out once again. And probably we'll be going live every day until Soto signs. And that's pretty much going to do that in general. As for other things from John Heyman, saying he is leaning on the Yankees, but it is tough. It's a smidge edge to them, but the Yankees will not have the final say on Soto, which we did see was reported by Feinstein last night, and saying that, out of the blue, saying that the Yankees will have the final say. He also said that Hal won't match Cohen if the offer is $50 million more, which I think we all kind of saw coming. And I think that it all really just shows that the Mets should just offer that. But in regards to all of that, here's how I see it, and I'll throw it right back to you. The Mets don't have a say in this bidding. The Yankees don't have a say. The Red Sox, this is the Scott Boras show, and we are living in it right now. Okay, so I feel like there are some people that took it where, and I'm not saying this as a salty Mets fan, to be honest, because I don't think the Mets have any say either, even though they have the money of Cohen. I don't think they have the say either because, again, this is the Scott Boras show. Like, for anybody that doesn't know how this petulant asshat works, in Scott Boras, he is running the show. He's maneuvering it. He's not going to go up to Hal Steinbrenner and say, oh, almighty Hal, almighty Yankees, please end this for me. He's enjoying this right now. This is his thing. This is Scott Boras. I don't know if that's the impression that you get, but it's like, I mean, come on. There's no team that is going to end things off unless there's, a matching to be done by pennies on the dollar. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that goes in the Mets' favor, it was mentioned on a previous Mets Weekly stream. I don't remember which one, but when the Correa thing happened, Scott Boras made a direct phone call to Steve Cohen at a weird hour of the night, and it was Steve Cohen that he called. It wasn't some other owners. It wasn't the Dodgers. It wasn't all these other teams. He called Steve Cohen. And Rosenthal said something of the same thing that, there was this idea that maybe the Yankees would be the team that gets maybe not last say, but the last offer will go to say, do you want to match this or go above this? And Rosenthal said the team is probably the Mets that's going to be that, if they receive an offer, they're going to bring it to Cohen and say, do you want to beat this offer? Or, what do you want to do with this? And I feel like that's kind of the case. We know that Steve Cohen really wants Juan Soto. Boras knows that. So he's going to use that to his advantage, to his client's advantage. So he's going to just keep saying, all right, well, the Red Sox scheduled this meeting with us. They've upped their offer to this number. What do you say, Steve Cohen? Match? Don't match? Go above it? What do you want to do with it? So I feel like no matter what, it's still going to come back to the Mets. And then, it comes down to these other teams of, where I think it could get to a point of when does it reach a number when some teams get a little uncomfortable and say, you know what, we really like them, we're offering a lot, but we can't go that far. I do wonder what is the magic number that it's once it hits this, it's okay, we're out. You got him, Steve Cohen, well done, we're pulling out right here. I do wonder where that number is. And, I understand the sense of urgency that the Red Sox want to get him. I was one of the first people to say, listen, you should have signed Mookie for half. That was your guy. Yeah. I don't know why all of a sudden now you want to be big spenders because you haven't really been big spenders lately. So that's kind of weird to me. With Toronto, you're a last place team that was 14 games under 500. And Toronto's books are not as clean as people might think. I mean, they do have quite a few multi-year deals. You have Springer. You have other guys like Barrios and Gossman. You're going to have to pay Vlad if you want to keep Vlad. That's going to be a big, big contract. So if the Blue Jays were to actually get in this mix and go over this $700 million number, it doesn't look too clean for them. And we talk about the Mets still needing more than Juan Soto. The Blue Jays need more than a Juan Soto to actually be very competitive. So I think that, there are some teams where that's where we're saying that, if it hit that number for Toronto, I know they're desperate, but I'm I wonder where they'd be okay, we got some other things that we need to attend to. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, Matt coming in here saying, I think anywhere over $700 million is where teams will get uncomfortable, which is why Cohen should offer $750 million. I think he's saving the big offer right at the end. It's possible that he does because maybe he is the last say, such as what Rosenthal said. We also had Jack Curry, who is a Yankees beat writer on the Michael Kay show, talking about how the Yankees they're comfortable with what they've presented, but they're not jumping and screaming right now because they know that, anything can shift with Scott Boras. But when it comes to the whole situation of, who has the final say, I think that nobody knows. Nobody knows. None of these guys know shit. I really don't. I think that the Mets have an advantage. I think the Yankees have some advantages as well. Red Sox, Blue Jays, again, up and down, who knows? But the Red Sox, maybe when they have that meeting, they'll get a little bit more of the idea to do that. But again, I think that magic number is 750, like Matt is saying, and I've talked about this many, many times, slapping $750 million on the table and say, take it or leave it. And that's pretty much it. I mean, and listen, Johnny, exactly, agree. This is the Scott Boras. This is what I mean. Like this is what he does. He pulls every single string known to man. And with Juan Soto, who is the generational talent that he is going to milk this the best way that he can. And, he's going to make us sweat this thing out. And I'm hoping that it leans the Mets' way, because there are factors that it would lead the Mets' way. There's factors that it will lead the Yankees' way. I personally still think he's going to stay with the Yankees. That's just my gut feeling. So maybe it's just I'm setting this up so I don't get disappointed. But it all really just has to do with what the aftermath is going to be. I'm hoping that we have Juan Soto within the next 72 hours, but I don't think that there is a guarantee where, I think what Jeff Passan said is pretty much the main thing as to where, it's pretty much at the winter meetings, metaphorically, of course, where, college signing day, he's got 5 hats in front of him. Whichever one he puts on, he's going to sign with. Nobody fucking knows. Nobody knows what's going to happen. We know who's the favorite, who's the betting odds favorite. No one knows what is going through Juan Soto's mind, okay? And we'll see what happens. Again, and listen, are you buying what Boras is selling right now, where he says Juan Soto is thoroughly looking at this, or do you think that he wants to stay with the Yankees? Do you think that he wants to go to the Mets? Do you think he wants to go somewhere else and didn't like something? We're not there behind closed doors, and I feel like some things that, leak out, the Mets don't leak many things. So we'll see what happens. We don't know what their offer is. We just know it's full throttle right now for Juan Soto. So you just never know. I don't know what it is going to be, but we are all going to be here for it. Most likely we will be live tomorrow with the latest of news in regards to this. I'll see who I will be joined by, whether it is Frank and Andrew or both of you guys. We don't know. We're just here again. We're along for the ride right now. I think that we're too deep at this current moment. So once again, within the next 72 hours, we will know what is going to happen with Juan Soto. At the latest of the first day of the winter meetings, a decision will be made. And then, of course, the A's did sign Severino. That's another thing that we touched up on as well. 3 years, $67 million player option in the 3rd year. Congratulations to Severino. He's earned it. It's been a pleasure, Sevy. I doubt that you're watching, but as a message to him, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for everything. Big part to our playoff run last year, and it's time to move on. Anyways, we will see you guys next time, whether it is tomorrow or whether it is the next day, whether it is on the moon somewhere. I don't even know. The craziness is continuing. The Soto saga continues. And before we wrap this thing up, any last words, Frank? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, listen, don't believe everything you read online. I mean, I'm sure you heard it from Carson a bunch of times, but unless Jeffrey Passan is the one that says it, just calm down, everyone. Don't worry about who's flying where, who's ordering what, who's liking this on social media and following this person. Don't worry about that stuff. Wait until Passan tweets it, and then we could all go crazy. But, don't stay up all night looking at a bunch of, like Carson was showing yesterday, those frauds, those are fake tweets. Don't worry about that stuff. Just stay patient. Like we said, hopefully we know by Monday. So don't stress yourself out tonight. Don't stay up to 2 a.m. refreshing Twitter. Everyone relax and enjoy. And, we'll get there very soon. So just stay patient.
And now Jeff Passan, the top guy, as you mentioned, he did give us a timeline as to where, this should resolve itself. And, again, if you are looking for reports, again, there's kind of a top 3 that I'm looking at regarding this Juan Soto. Jeff Passan is definitely the most trustworthy here. Ken Rosenthal, you definitely could go to, because I think he's been he's had his moments, but I think he's been very accurate during this whole offseason so far. Listen, if John Heyman stops, if John Heyman stops licking Scott Boris's balls for once, maybe he's a little bit trustworthy, but it's an in and out thing. It's very, second to second with him because he is pretty much the Boris mouthpiece.
I could see Soto himself announcing it too. That's the other thing I would also kind of throw out there. So he's the other guy I obviously watch. I could see Soto announcing it himself. I could see that.
Yeah, we'll see who does announce it. I do think that it's going to be John Heyman to break it, just because of how close he is in regards to it. We're all going to wait for Passan to confirm it because we know that he is the top guy. But again, we'll see what happens. But thank you guys so much for those of you who tuned in today. For those of you in the chat, I don't even acknowledge you guys at the end. I really should here. Truyo, D Savage in here. I think I have a list of our participants I can go through. Lulu, thank you. Matt, of course. Ricardo as well. Davidson, thank you for tuning in. Walter, thank you so much. Ramon, thank you. Rosie K as well. Some of our loyal viewers that have come back. For those of you who are not subscribed, make sure to hit the subscribe button. Turn on those post notifications for when we go live or when videos come out. Follow us on X, TikTok, all of us individually. Links in the description, including our third co-host, Andrew, who has not been feeling well these past few days. So make sure to send your best wishes to him. But he will be back at it when he can, as he has told to us, or maybe he just goes missing. Who knows? Anyways, Soto Watch continues, of course, and we will make sure to go live when some other news does break. And we will see you guys next time. Let's go Mets. Again, don't believe everything that you hear on social media. Wait for the big guys to confirm it. And hopefully Juan Soto is a Met. We're crossing our fingers. We would love for it to happen. Anyways, we will see you guys next time. Let's go Mets. And we will see you guys. Peace out.